This is part 3 of our series on forming. I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about hole deformation. This is something that you really got to consider, especially if you have a thick part, something typically 10 gauge or up. This really starts to become an issue. The thing to remember about forming is when you're bending the material, I think I'll start off over here. When you're bending the material, it's not just the radius and the actual bend itself that moves. The steel all the way back up in here is still gonna pull and stretch as well. Now that has significance if you're putting your holes too close to the bend line. Those holes will deform, so instead of a nice round hole like this, because I draw circles very well, so that's clearly round, you're going to get something that pulls and is going to get a little more egg shape to it. In some cases it's not going to matter for you. It's just a through hole. You got to put, you just oversize the hole a little bit. The part is still going to go through, but it's not going to look good. So there's a rule of thumb that you got to keep in mind when you're placing your holes. If you got a bend, now we're going to look top down. This is the bend right there, and that's the rest of the part. So that's profile view, top down view. And we place our hole. From the outside dimension to the end of the deformation zone is going to be 4 times the material thickness. Now, so that is the first material thickness is going to be the material itself. The second material thickness is going to be the radius, like we discussed in the previous part of this episode. And then the next 2 material thicknesses is what I like to call the deformation zone. So if any part of your hole is in this, then it's gonna risk pulling and deforming into that egg shape that I mentioned earlier. It's not always 4 times. 4 times would be for materials 10 gauge and up. If you're using something smaller, 11 gauge or thinner than that, then actually it's just 3.5 times the material thickness. So that's for 11 gauge and lower. Thinner materials, like I said, not as much of a concern for the holes, but thick materials, watch where you're putting your holes. If you absolutely have to have a hole very close to the edge, then you might have to consider welding for that instance. So any changes you can make in that area could save you some money. One other thing I want to talk about forming, not related to hole deformation, but it is a little bit of deformation. When you bend the part, especially for thick parts, a little bit of the metal is going to pop out on the sides. So you can see how this edge here is coming out towards the sides, kind of poking out like a little squished love handle. Most of the time, like 99 times out of 100, that doesn't matter. But if you're trying to put your part into a very specific area, that's something that you should take into account. That's a very difficult dimension to predict how much that's going to be. But if it's something that you need to take care of, then what we can do is we can machine the sides down. Although that is going to be a little bit of cost. So that wraps up our bit on forming. So if you have any questions or anything, you can leave a comment if we have a comment section. If not, you can write us an email at sales@shortrunpro.com, or you can give us a call. We'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time.